Hello, today we're going to talk about body paragraphs, the meat and potatoes of your essay, also known as the MEL-L-L-Con. So if we look at the big picture of our essay, the first thing we have is our introduction, and the last sentence, so remember the last sentence of our first paragraph is the thesis. And the thesis is so important, like super important. We need to make sure that everything we do is proving that thesis statement. Everything we write proves the thesis statement. If it does not prove the thesis statement, get it out of there. Now, remember in our thesis statement, remember our formula, the what you believe minus I believe plus your reasons. Those reasons should be the two main body paragraphs. So the two reasons or three reasons in your thesis statement should be your body paragraphs. Those should be the first sentences of your body paragraphs, and then the whole body paragraph works to prove that main idea claim, which then in turn proves your thesis statement. Then in the end, you review everything in a conclusion paragraph. Now if we look at this diagram, it's just kind of a more in-depth look at that same concept. So in this diagram, we have a thesis statement. This would be part of our introduction. Remember, it's the last sentence, LS, our last sentence of our intro paragraph. Now with this thesis statement, we have this idea that our person is trying to make a claim here. Through the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian, Sherman Alexie shows that people's identities are made up of many qualities, not just skin color, as shown by the Res refusing to accept Junior and his eventual acceptance at Reardon. In this situation, we have the what we believe. Sherman Alexie shows that people's identities are made up of many qualities, not just skin color. This is the what they believe. Then we also have the reasons. The Res refusing to accept Junior, and then his eventual acceptance at Reardon. So we have the what they believe and the reasons why. So then if you look at this diagram, the first body paragraph starts with a main idea. And this main idea, is directly related to the first reason. And it says, failure to be accepted by a social group can shape one's identity. This directly connects to that first reason, the Res refusing to accept Junior. So then everything in this paragraph is working to prove this concept, that failure to be accepted by a social group can shape one's identity. Similarly, our second main body paragraph has a claim like this. Acceptance into a social group can shape one's identity. This directly relates to the second reason in the thesis. So therefore, just as before, everything in that paragraph is working to prove this claim. When you have proven your two body paragraph claims, you then in turn prove your thesis statement. So remember, everything you do needs to work to prove the thesis statement. If we get even closer up into our essay, we have an idea of what our paragraphs looks like. We look at our paragraphs, we want to start out with our main idea claim. That's the first chunk. This sentence should remember to be connected to the reasons that you have in your thesis statement. Then you give proof. That would be the context in the quote. You need to make sure that you give us some reasons or specific evidence from the book to prove why you're right. Then the next part is the most important part. It's the analysis and the significance. This is how you prove how your proof proves the claim. This is where you need to use your words, your reasoning skills, to justify and explain how you know. You might have to refer back to the text, you might have to give examples, you might have to really explain. You really want to make sure that you're being as thorough as possible. You do this again and then wrap up with a conclusion sentence. So this in turn would be one body paragraph. And you need 2 of these for the essay. Now, when we put quotations as evidence in our essay, we want to include something called CQA, context, quote, and analysis. So the context is important because it tells us who the speaker is, so which character or the narrator is talking, and what's happening. This allows us to understand where is your proof coming from and to understand the situation in which it's coming so that we can understand a little bit more about your evidence. Once you have your evidence, you're going to have to analyze it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take this piece of evidence from Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and we're going to consider how it reveals something larger about identity. And we're going to do this by doing context, quote, analysis. So the first thing we want to do with our context is we want to make sure that we're connecting this to a main idea claim. And remember, our main idea claim are connected to the reasons in thesis statement. Now, first we have to tell us our main idea claim, failure to accept it by a social group can shape one's identity. The next, we want to make sure that we're giving the context. This is the what's happening. So while talking to his white friend Gordy, he explains why people in the res call him an apple. The next thing we need to do is tell us the speaker. In this case, it's Junior. The next thing we want to do is find a quotation, and we already have one. But in this case, we want to make sure that it's important, relevant, and it actually supports your opinion, claim, or argument. Sometimes students find quotes that just vaguely connect, and then in turn, it actually contradicts their point. You want to make sure that it actually proves the thesis. It needs to be proving the thesis. So in this situation, first we have our main idea claim, then we have our context, making sure to give us the speaker, and now I've set up the quote. You always want to make sure that you cite what page it's from so people can find it later. The most important part is the significance, also known as analysis. This is how you explain how your quote proves the thesis. It's where you put your own words and idea. And everything you do in the analysis needs to make sure you're revealing this thing. How does it prove your claim? Why is this quotation important? What does it mean? What does it matter? And how does it relate to the theme? But more than anything else, you need to make sure you explain how it proves your claim. So if you give a piece of evidence saying that this piece of evidence shows that people can have multiple identities, you need to actually get down and say, well, how does that quote show? What is the quote showing? What is happening in this quote? Who is talking? What does it mean? And why does it show it? You need to explain beyond that you've ever explained before. So here is an example. In this, first we start in the yellow sentence was my main idea claim. Failure to be accepted by a social group can shape an identity. Then I give the context in blue. This is the what's happening and who's talking. While talking to his white friend Gordy, he explains why people in the res call him an apple. Junior says, now I give the quote in green. They call me an apple because they think I'm red on the outside and white on the inside. Now in orange, this is all of my opinion, and I am proving how the quote about being called an apple proves that not being accepted by a social group shapes one's identity. Junior is a Native American who struggles to fit into his home, the res. By saying he's red on the outside, he's explaining how others view him as outwardly as an Indian as his heritage and race. Yet, when said to be white on the inside, he is showing how the res views him to have a desire to be more like white people. This defines Junior's identity as he rejects this idea, believing he can like white things and still hold true to his native roots. So in this large section, I'm giving my own commentary, ideas, and thoughts on the quote on how it proves what I think it. I don't just say this shows Junior has many identities, I go in and I explain in 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences. I spend a lot of time explaining this one little quote, and you should too. If you look at this is actually about 2/3 of my paragraph is me talking about the quote. If you're finding that your paragraphs are mostly quote, try again. You need to explain your quotes more than you ever think you need to. So if we look back, remember that about 50% or maybe even 2/3, that would be about 66%, needs to be the analysis and significance of your quote. You need to explain how. This is so important. So remember, looking back at this diagram, everything you do in your body paragraphs, and this would have the context, the quotes, and analysis, everything you do with this analysis to prove how that quote proves the main idea, which in turn proves the thesis statement, everything you do needs to prove the thesis statement. Everything you do needs to prove the thesis statement. So now to think about the pre-writing document that you've been given, I want to point out a couple parts in your document that are meant to help you. First of all, step 4 is where you're going to develop your thesis statement. It has a graphic organizer that allows you to follow the thesis statement outline, the WYB minus IB plus R, in which you come up with your I believe statement, and you take out I believe, and then you give your reasons. This can be written to make your thesis. Once you've written your thesis, you take your reasons, and in step 5, you break out your reasons to make your main body craft main ideas. Remember, these should be the first sentence of your body paragraphs, so that when you start to write your body paragraphs, don't reinvent the wheel. Step 5 has the first sentences, the main idea claims, also known as the topic sentences. These should be directly related to the reasons in your thesis. Then from there, everything is basically a melcon, and you know how to write paragraphs, you know how to write melcons. At this point, you're really going to work on body paragraphs and not anything else, but I just remember, everything you do needs to prove the thesis statement. Thank you.